what I love about the 10-year vision, what are 10 things I'd love to say are true about myself 10 years from now, is that it gives your reticular activating system kind of a big picture thing to focus on. And it will begin to collect or notice things that are going to help you get to those points or create those things. Did you know that your dreams will always require your healing? It's true, and that could be why you freeze or shut down whenever you try to move towards your own brilliant creativity. This podcast exists to show you exactly why that is and how to move towards creating the things that only you can. So let's go. I'm Courtney Lancaster, and this is the Heal Create Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Heal Create Podcast. I'm so glad you guys are here. We actually did not have an episode last week because it was my birthday. I am now. I turned 40 years old a week ago, and my husband turned 40 years old 2 weeks before that. So last week was really the week when we kind of went ham. All of our friends flew in, and we did a bunch of super fun stuff, including going to Vegas to see one of my husband's favorite bands, U2, at the Sphere, which was crazy. It was the most fun week of my entire life. It was so much fun, and it has me thinking a lot about decades and the 10-year period of creativity. So have you guys ever heard the phrase, people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they way underestimate what they can do in 10 years? That is something that I have been thinking a lot about as I've been entering this new decade and then going back 10 years ago into where I was at the time. And I think that my 20s, like all people in their 20s, my 20s were really about ego, which there's nothing wrong with that. You know, ego is just being the person that you think you need to be to get all your needs met and to be seen and safe and all of the things. It's not necessarily your authentic self, although it can have a lot of similarities. But really what's important to know about the ego is that it's the place that you are coming from in your expression and your creativity has more to do with survival than thriving in authenticity. And I think that really categorizes my own 20-somethings. I see, especially at this vantage point, a lot of narcissism, massive insecurity, obviously so much that was undealt with that I did not know until the very beginning of my 30s. And my 30s can really be titled the healing years, because it was essential for me to do so. And so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what I learned in my 30s, but I also just want to take the time to encourage any of you who are looking to walk through transformation or you're looking to create things to begin thinking about your life in these 10-year periods. One of the exercises that I learned to do a few years ago and that I do with all of my clients is have them write out 10 things that they would like to say are true 10 years from now. What's wonderful about this practice, it's actually from Rachel Hollis. I think it's from her book, Girl Stop Apologizing. And she talks about how she began doing this and very quickly, way before 10 years had passed, she began seeing a lot of these things come true. And that's because when you set your sights on something and you begin to focus on something, there are so many things that you naturally, there's a lot of science behind this. There's also a lot of, woo-woo manifesting, which isn't necessarily the platform that I speak from, but there's so much crossover. Even just being like a co-creator of God in my, Christian background. Those are all really valid ways to see this perspective of setting a vision for your life. But I love the science behind it. I love that there's something called the reticular activating system in your brain that basically is the part of your brain that is collecting patterns, collecting evidence that something that you think is true. And your reticular activating system is always working for you. So your reticular activating system is the part of your brain that when, you buy a new car, all of a sudden you notice everybody has that car everywhere. Or when you hear like a new word, all of a sudden you feel like everybody's using that word and you don't know how you didn't know that word before. That's your reticular activating system, and it's collecting patterns for you. And the thing about anxiety or trauma is that it will sort of hack your reticular activating system to see patterns of danger, starting to notice all the people that maybe are annoyed with you, or starting to notice all of the terrible news in the world. That's a hard one to disengage from, right? But it will begin noticing what you focus on. And so you can hack it back. You can hack it in a way that actually serves you. You can begin to, if you're really struggling with your partner, you can begin to say, wow, look at how my partner and I have these moments of connection. And your brain, neutral as it is, will be like, okay, cool. So we'll start looking for all the moments of connection. Or you can say, look at how much I love my kids. And your brain, might have been looking at how much your kids annoy you, but instead your brain will begin to look for how much you love your kids and how connected you feel to them. Or look how easy creativity is. And this isn't gaslighting yourself. This is just choosing to see and focus on what is also true, the positive parts of your life and the things that you want to create, as opposed to the negative or the painful patterns. What I love about the 10-year vision, what are 10 things I'd love to say are true about myself 10 years from now, is that it gives your reticular activating system kind of a big picture thing to focus on. And it will begin to collect or notice things that are going to help you get to those points or create those things. And that's a really powerful thing. I know that I've said this on this podcast before, and I've said it in lots of interviews, but one of the most important things I learned in my healing journey was that you can't heal if you can't dream. Well, I had no idea how to dream, though. I just would feel sometimes these moments of inspiration, and I didn't really know what they meant. I didn't have any focus or clarity or vision. I just would feel good sometimes. And what do you do with that when you're mostly anxious all the other 90% of the time, right? So this practice really helped me narrow in on what do I want? What am I actually wanting to create with my life? And if you're sitting down to do this, it can look like, okay, remember that we're going to speak as though it's in present terms about what is happening in your life now. So if I'm writing a list, 10 things that I want to say are true about my life 10 years from now, then what's the first one that I want to say? I might say something like, my nervous system is regulated. I am peaceful, calm, and joyful. Second thing might be, I live in a really beautiful house in a safe neighborhood. You might say, I am deeply connected to a community of like-minded, loving people. You're going to want to think about the different areas of your life and what would be the ideal version of each of the areas of your life. If you're married and have kids, then in 10 years from now, what do you want to say your relationship with those people looks and feels like? If you are a creative or an artist, what are some of the things that you want to accomplish? And if you're an entrepreneur, or if you are wanting to focus on learning different skills, like I speak fluent Spanish, or I've been to Europe, or whatever, they can be as literal as you want. But basically, we just want to get you excited about your life as if anything was possible, because, anything is possible. If anything is possible, then what do you want to create with your life? So some of those things that I just listed actually are the things that were on my list. My nervous system is regulated. I know how to come back into regulation, I should say, after being triggered. I wrote this list. Maybe I began writing it 5 years ago. And Rachel Hollis suggested actually writing it every single morning, just rehearsing and writing that every morning. And that really does a lot for your brain too. Then it really it creates that neural pathway, really digs it in, really reminds you every single day of what you're here to create. And you'll start to notice that there'll be certain resources that'll be highlighted to you because I believe that God is always guiding us to the things that we're here to create with him, but also your reticular activating system is on the lookout for things that are going to help you build the things that you want to build. So what is fascinating is I found the same thing that Rachel found, which was it did not take 10 years for most everything to come true. Now, what I will say that I've learned a few years later is that there were things that I wrote down that were very literal, and that's a great place to start. There's nothing wrong with that. I think what I'm zeroing in on now is, how do I want to feel? What do I want to experience in my body? That might sound like a weird way to say that, but what I'm saying is, there was a time in my life. You know what? I'll go back to when I was 20. My biggest dream at 20 was that I was going to win American Idol. I mean, what singer didn't have that dream, honestly? I think we all tried out. I auditioned for American Idol a couple times, and I was devastated when that didn't happen because that was the thing that I thought was going to get me everything that I wanted at the time. What I really wanted at the time was to be seen, to be heard. I wanted to be supported in my artistry and my songwriting and singing, which is what it looked like American Idol offered to its participants, was this like support system. Anyways, blah, blah, blah. All of these like emotional and, artistic supportive needs that I had, I literally, my smart subconscious said, hey, this one thing looks like it will fill all of your needs. And so, obviously I didn't win American Idol. And I was so devastated by that. But if I were to really have looked at like the emotional needs underneath that literal thing, I would have found that there are a lot of ways to get those needs met. And so all that to say, I am at the place right now where I've relaxed a lot on the literal things, because honestly, the literal things that I wanted to create, I did create over the last 5 years. And now we're just going deeper and we're thinking about, okay, what are some of the emotional needs that I want to experience, and like the connection that I want to have with God and with my friends and with my art and with my husband and my kids. What does that look like? So 10 years from now, what do I want to say? And I have this really cool opportunity to be at this decade break where my 30s are over and my 40s are beginning, and I can think about, okay, at 50, how do I want to feel? Which honestly, this is a side note. I saw something on Instagram. Maybe somebody sent me. She's like a pro-aging lady, I guess, on Instagram, and she posts up a lot of pro-aging stuff, and I think she's in her 60s. And I just love aging right now. Like, and the time that we're at, not that we're all not still working stuff out, because we are, but I feel like life is just beginning in a way that I don't know that I've ever felt before. And I want to encourage you, especially if you're just in the thick of it, that there were times in my 30s when I really thought my life was over, where I wanted to accomplish so much before I was 40 because of the bullshit, cultural thing, especially for artists, where youth is relevancy. That's just completely made up. And I love that we have more and more people that are like, no, I'm the healthiest and the most excited and the most creative and the most connected I've ever been in my 70s or whatever. I love that. Okay, so what I want to do is, encourage you to dive into that practice. It's actually something that I really go deep in the You series. I was just writing out a bunch of the copy for that, but basically I created this 3-part video series at the end of the summer. And it's basically what I walk my clients through, because it's what I walked through, or what I wish that I had really when I was so anxious and so confused, honestly. I think that that's something that I really realize now, is that so much of my anxiety had to do with not knowing who I was, which, I've heard somebody say that's the biggest trauma you can go through, is to not know your identity, to not know who you are. And this is being deeply raised in the church. So I had people that were like, your identity in Christ, you should know who you are. But the truth was, I had no idea what I liked, my preferences, my ideas, my beliefs. I did not know who I was because of so much unprocessed pain. And I had no idea. I really did not know that I was who I hoped I was deep inside. And so are you. But I created this course to help people walk through, if you're starting at the point that I was at, to help you walk all the way through and design a map for you to walk your healing path and into your creative power. And it's 3 modules. The first module is called Authentic You. The second module is called The Wounded You. And the third module is called The Creative You. But in the Authentic You, we go really deep into this. And this is just one of the exercises that I have you walk through. And it's this idea of, what are 10 things that I'd like to say are true for my life 10 years from now? So I encourage you to do that. what I want to do, I want to talk about what I learned in my 30s. Because I guess I'm sort of midlifey now, and I don't know, I feel like I have the audacity to share some of the wisdom that I've gathered. I think I feel so proud of myself for what I actually went through in my 30s, because even though there are so many things that I did incorrectly, there are so many things that I did that did not help me. I really, based on my family system, based on what I knew at the time, I really was kind of like hacking my way through the wilderness. I had nobody in my life who had experienced such extreme anxiety and depression that was diagnosed with all the things like I was. I didn't know what I was doing. And there were so many things that I had to learn from scratch, and uncover like my identity. So to be honest, I feel so grateful for my 30s, but I am glad that they're over. That was a really, really hard 10 years, beautiful moments in it, but it was so hard and so painful. And I'm just so proud of myself for making it through. And I feel like I have a bit of treasure to share with you from those 10 years. So, okay, I posted this on my Instagram account, but I thought I would kind of go over it in detail. 5 things that I learned in my 30s. Understanding your nervous system will completely change your life. If you know me at all, and if you listen to this podcast at all, you know 100% that is my worldview. Understanding your nervous system, understanding the body that you created and how it works, the body that God created and how it works, is absolutely essential to your well-being. Not understanding that will impair you in ways that you can't even imagine. But really deeply understanding how your nervous system is actually working for you, how anxiety and depression are actually these protective states that we go into, not evil spirits, not external beings trying to take you down, and not even horrible parts of yourself. They're just these your body going into self-protective states. Fight or flight is your body under threat, trying to protect you. Depression is your body shut down, thinking that it can't protect you, so trying to numb you instead. And none of these things are bad, and all of them are healable. Truly. Understanding my nervous system changed absolutely everything. And just really quick, if you need a resource for that, you can check out Deb Dana's book, Anchored. I always tell people to start with that. That is just the from scratch, absolute nervous system basic education. My Polyvagal World, or Our Polyvagal World by Seth and Stephen Porges. I had Seth on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he's fantastic, but they also offer really, really helpful telling of your nervous system and how your nervous system affects the way that you see absolutely everything. So number one thing I learned in my 30s was about my nervous system. And now I'm just a evangelist for the nervous system. It's true. You know what I mean. Number 2, a connection to God is essential for a healthy human. Even if that is a restless wrestling or bitter doubt about your creator, that counts. I remember reading in a trauma textbook that said that a healthy human is a human that is connected to a source of love that's bigger than themselves. It was just like a random trauma textbook. I think it was Stephen Porges actually, but not one of his more mainstream, like more readable books. It was like really technical. And I remember peeling that sentence out of that book like, yeah, that makes sense. We weren't made to be disconnected from a greater sense of love. And I think somebody that I even really, really look up to, who I wouldn't say at all is religious, but she said something about even those who don't think that they're connected to God, when they're joyful, if they're inspired, if they're connected to others, they are connected to something bigger than themselves. And so for me, I think what I realized, especially growing up in a very conservative, evangelical Christian tradition, into my 20s and 30s, where I was, very much in evangelical ministry, charismatic ministry even, and then the breakdown of that in my 30s. There's just a time, and I have so much compassion for people that go through this, but there's a time when you really just don't know up from down. Everything's confusing. You feel like all you are full of is questions about God and everything that you've ever learned. And it honestly, genuinely feels terrifying. I wish that we had so much more grace and compassion for those that are in a deconstruction season, because it's so essential to becoming the person that you're supposed to be, making your faith your own, as the Bible says. But we really, I think the church, what I've noticed, is so scared of it. So scared of it. Instead of seeing it as like the normal path of a healthy human, we become so scared of it that we don't let people go through process. We worry about them, and worrying about somebody actually is a really disconnecting thing to do. But I know people that have stayed in that season. The people that have torn their faith down, and rightfully so, if it was based on a lot of negative fear-based religion. That is not Jesus. This is not the love of God. But stayed in a very untrusting and bitter place. And that is, again, will probably just be part of their journey. But when you stay there for a long time and you kind of look at the fruit of your life, a lot of times you see somebody who isn't in community, who doesn't have connection with a lot of people, and who's very wary and untrusting. Those are all signs of a dysregulated nervous system. So I'm not saying you have to be in church to have a regulated nervous system. Heck no. There's churches really everywhere. I personally think church is really beautiful, and we've ended up returning, and I love being a part of a church, but I do not think that that's the only path for for spirituality or Christianity. Being connected to God is really so essential. It's so essential for your healing journey. It's essential to know and to be connected, just like a healthy child is connected to their loving and supportive parents. Knowing that, there are resources available to you because you are so loved. There's support available to you because you're so loved. That could come in a lot of different ways, but it's really essential for a healthy human body. Okay, number 3. I got a lot of feedback on number 3, and I thought that it was really interesting, and I kind of want to dig into it more in 2024. But it's one of the most magical / painful things that I've learned in my 30s, and that is this. We are way, way, way more afraid to be deeply connected to our people than we are afraid to be in the wrong relationships or friendships. No matter what culture tries to sell you about toxic people or moving on, or the ever romantic just start over, the burn it down narrative, most of the time, that niggling doubt or annoyance or disconnection you have with that partner or friend is not a sign that you're with the wrong people, but rather that you may not have learned how to attach to other people properly. Asterisk. Most of us haven't. Learn your attachment styles and get risky with your connections to the good and imperfect people in your life. This was so huge for me. There's a lot of reasons why. One of the things that I noticed when I was in my 30s was how often I tried to break up with everything because it makes such a good story, maybe because I watched too many romantic comedies. I don't know. I would, constantly, if I would be in a fight with a friend, I would be like, well, I guess we're just not going in the same direction. And it's been nice, but this is what they talk about in the healing journey. Some people you just have to let go of. Or when I would get, my husband and I went through a couple of really rough patches in our 30s as we both kind of went on our own healing journeys. And I realized how often I would go towards like, well, I'm going to have to meet someone new and it's going to be, hard to get divorced. But I mean, I don't mean to joke about this, but this is what now I know so many clients of mine do too. Or, going through a rough patch with your community and just thinking, I'm just not in the right group of people. This isn't my authentic self. And what's interesting is that when you really learn about how wounded so many of us are with our attachment and with our attunement, meaning, if somebody was really with us in our emotions growing up, it's going to be way easier for us to connect to imperfect people, which, everyone's imperfect. But for those of us that did not have secure attachment and attunement as a kid, we're going to be waiting for the end all the time. And if you're like me and live more in the defense, you're going to be like planning and writing a story about how everything is ending. Even if you're in the powerful position of being the one that ends it, that's still, if you're constantly doing that, that's coming from dysregulation. That's coming from disorganized, insecure, anxious, and avoidant attachment. I have so many clients, and myself included, who really struggled with relationship anxiety, where you're with this healthy person who's willing to grow next to you, and there's no red flags, but you're constantly worried about, if the relationship isn't the one, or if they're not, the person you should have married, or if they're going to leave you. It's like almost every single client that I work with has a story like this. And Cheryl Paul, one of my teachers, really helped me see, first of all, how prevalent that is in our culture, because our culture is, with our short attention spans, ready to, we can't even commit to a TV show. We're so ready to burn down the home that, the town that we live in, the church that we go to, the school that we go to, the career that we're in. As soon as we get triggered, hear me on this, as soon as a part of us shows up because of a situation we're in, we are so quick to blame it on the situation as opposed to looking at what triggered us. We could probably be in similar situations for our entire lives, and grow and learn and find magic if we knew that. Yes, there is like magic in, starting over and moving, but we are way more afraid to stay with good people, good and imperfect people, than we are afraid that we're in the wrong group of people or relationship or town or whatever. I think it's something to really think about. Is this relationship really not good or healthy or the one for me? Or am I just getting triggered in a way that feels so painful for me to own and look at? I think what I've noticed is that especially in my 30s, when I really was able to own and look at a lot of my own triggers were so painful. My friends, my friends and the people in my life, like, I could see them clearly. I could see that no one is actually out to get me, and that I'm not at risk of being abandoned all the time if I'm always with myself. It made it so much easier to see the beauty in the people around me. And I will say that I did end up going in a different direction than a couple of friends of mine, but it wasn't in the way that you would think. It wasn't like, this is over, we are done. It was like, we tried to work it out, and we just kind of realized we were going in different directions, and there's a lot of respect for each other. One of my mentors, Laura Duncan, calls it rebranding. She's like, most relationships never need to be burned down. They need to be rebranded. Like, oh, this used to be a best friend of mine, but now this is somebody that I'm friendly with at barbecues. Very rarely, unlike the soap operas or the TV shows or movies or Instagram stories that our, culture has, very rarely do we actually need to burn anything down. Number 4, creativity is the natural state of the body that feels calm. We've got more big dreamers in this culture than ever, but also more anxiety. Learn safety, creativity naturally follows. This is so important to understand. And well, actually, I should say, because it was my 30s that I lived through and learned this, this was so helpful for me to understand, because I am a creative and because I see the world through a highly sensitive and artistic and mostly romantic lens. When I was dysregulated, meaning when I was in anxiety or shut down or depressed or whatever, it was really difficult for me to access my own creativity. And I didn't understand that was because my body was in self-protection. I thought it was because there was something wrong with me, because I wasn't working hard enough. I even would think like, oh, then maybe this is because I have kids. I became a mom and that's why I can't be as creative as I want to. All of that is not true. The truth is that there is a flow state that is accessible to you when you are regulated, when you feel calm, curious, creative, compassionate, curious, joyful, inspired, all the things. When you feel safe in your body, you will notice that creativity is a natural outflow of that safety, which, kind of brings us back to number 1. Understanding your nervous system is everything, because the way that we increase the capacity to be safe is by teaching our nervous system over time to relax, that we're good, we've got ourselves, God's got us. We're updating the information over time to our nervous system that this situation that's triggering you is just reminding you of an old event that really is over. This was a whole, I don't know, 5 years of my 30s, really, really, really learning this. So I don't mean to make it sound like it's easy. It's not easy, especially if you're really dysregulated, but it's very possible. And what you can know is that creativity, there's an endless flow for you. I don't care if you're 85, you can access creativity. Creativity connected to a frantic sense of scarcity. I'm running out of time. I'm running out of time to be relevant. I'm running out of ideas. I have writer's block, whatever. That is taking the thing that is natural to you and connecting it to a survival state. And that's when you really notice the most tension with your own creativity. So learn safety in your body. Creativity naturally flows. Last thing, some things from your past come back to haunt you, like patterns, memories, and low-rise jeans. I'm reading these off of my Instagram post and I'm just laughing at myself. Don't be afraid of that. Trust that whatever comes up has something to teach you and you'll never feel like a victim to life. So this is nothing new, but I'm telling you, especially now having worked with, I don't even know, hundreds of clients, individually and in groups, I can tell you that the ones that make it are the ones with the growth mindset. And I know that that's just very Tony Robbins of me to say. I know that that's nothing new, but the victim mindset is really real in the way that it keeps you from growing. And knowing that everything that comes up in your life has something to teach you and is all actually helping you create the life that you're here to create is so essential to your momentum that I would really take a hard look at the belief systems that tell you that you're helpless or that you can't do it, or that it's because of your circumstances that you're suffering or uncomfortable. None of that's true. Everything has something to teach you. So I encourage you, even if you're not at a decade break like I am, you have the power to create your next 10 years. You really, really do. I don't want you to think of it in terms of 6 months from now, a year from now. I want you to think in terms of 10 years from now. What do you want to say is true about your life? Dream really, really big. And then I want you to watch as the perfect triggers and the perfect opportunities and the perfect resources and the perfect support begin to find you like a magnet. They are going to just come to you because God is, I believe, the angels, all the resources of heaven are holding their breath, waiting for you to say what it is you want to create so that they can help you heal what's in the way of you creating that. That is why you're here. You are here to create to have the time of your life and to enjoy this world that God made, to heal this world that God made through your healing, through your creativity, through your dreams. I mean, the dreams that you have are here to heal the world, which is a whole other podcast episode. But the last thing I'll say is this summer, as I was really getting excited about coming out of my own healing journey and coming out of shutdown and just being just super hyped about life, I went to 20 concerts this year. And there was one that I was at and I was just so enjoying the music, but I was so tired. And I was like, I was just realizing how much I was racing to do all the fun things and to heal and to, get my message out there and to create and do all the things. And I felt like God very clearly spoke to me in that moment and said, slow down, child, you're going to be here for a while. And not in the way of like, he wasn't promising me some like magical timeline. He was just wanting me to remember that eternity is written on my heart and that I am in no rush, that I have eternity for connection and creativity. So if I'm going to be here for a while, or let's pretend that I am going to be on this earth for a while, then I can relax. And you know what, when you can relax, ironically, that's when you feel the most creative. So that's all I got for you guys today. I will be sharing more about the You series that will be launching for pre-sale in the middle of January. It's really exciting. We have so many resources. We just have put so much into this series, and it's really just for you to take a journey with me through your own healing so that you can design your decades and your life. Yeah, so I hope that you all have such a beautiful week in this busy holiday time, and I hope that you have a very beautiful life. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Heal Create podcast. If you have enjoyed this podcast at all, we would love if you would subscribe, rate it, send it to your friends. That would really help us get this message out, this message of empowering people towards emotionally sustainable creativity. Also, we have a PDF for you. So there's an exercise that I created called Inspiration Mirroring. And basically, it is for those that are looking to get acquainted with their authentic, truest self, based on the idea that whatever inspires you embodies your potential. And so if you want to get started on that journey today of really understanding who you are at your core, the person that you hope you are, then you can go to the link in my bio on Instagram or go to my website and download that PDF. I think that's all. Have a beautiful day.